Betina Anton walked through the automatic doors of St. Catherine's Emergency Department wearing simple blue scrubs and carrying a worn leather messenger bag. Her black hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, but behind her dark eyes lay the experience of piloting the world's most classified stealth aircraft at altitudes where the sky turns black and the curve of Earth becomes visible. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of St. Catherine's Medical Center as Betina Anton clipped her hospital ID badge to her navy blue scrubs. To everyone around her, she was just another traveling nurse, a temporary staff member hired to fill critical shortages in the emergency department. Her credentials listed 3 years of emergency medicine experience across various European hospitals. Nothing more remarkable than competent medical training and a willingness to work difficult shifts. But the truth about Betina Anton was classified at levels that didn't officially exist. She adjusted the stethoscope around her neck with the same hands that had gripped the controls of experimental aircraft, flying missions that would never appear in any public record. Her personnel file, carefully sanitized and placed in the hospital's hiring system, contained no mention of her actual background. Squadron leader Betina Anton, NATO's most decorated test pilot, specialized in evaluating prototype stealth technology for joint European defense initiatives. 3 months ago, she had been conducting classified flight tests over the North Sea, pushing experimental aircraft beyond their theoretical limits. Now, after a controversial mission that had been buried under layers of international security agreements, she found herself reassigned through what her handler called administrative repositioning, the military's elegant phrase for placing a valuable but compromised asset in deep cover while investigations concluded. St. Catherine's Medical Center represented the perfect hiding place. A prestigious teaching hospital affiliated with the nearby Blackwood Air Force Base, it treated both civilian patients and military personnel from the classified research facility. Her assignment seemed straightforward: maintain her nursing cover while conducting discreet surveillance on medical staff who might have access to sensitive information about the base's experimental programs. The emergency department buzzed with controlled chaos as Betina approached the nurses' station for her orientation briefing. Senior staff moved with practiced efficiency between trauma bays, their conversations a mixture of medical terminology and gallows humor typical of emergency medicine. The environment felt familiar despite the career change, high-stakes decision-making, split-second timing, and lives hanging in the balance. "You must be our new travel nurse," said a woman with graying hair and kind eyes, extending her hand. In greeting, "I'm Sarah Chun, charge nurse for the day shift. Welcome to Organized Madness." Betina shook her hand with carefully practiced deference. "Betina Anton, thank you for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to contributing to the team." Sarah's expression reflected the cautious optimism typical of experienced nurses evaluating temporary staff. Travel nurses often brought excellent skills but could also disrupt established routines. "Your credentials show solid emergency experience. We'll start you in triage assessment, relatively straightforward cases while you learn our protocols." As they walked through the department, Betina methodically cataloged details that would never appear in nursing reports: security camera placement, computer terminal access, staff interaction patterns, and most importantly, which personnel wore the discrete identifying markers that indicated clearance for treating military patients from Blackwood AFB. The trauma bay setup impressed her with its sophisticated equipment and efficient layout. State-of-the-art monitoring systems, advanced imaging capabilities, and communication networks that clearly exceeded typical civilian hospital standards. This wasn't just a medical facility, it was infrastructure designed to support highly classified military operations. "One thing you should know," Sarah mentioned as they reached the triage area. "We receive priority patients from Blackwood occasionally. Military personnel with specialized medical needs. The protocols are straightforward, but confidentiality is absolutely critical." Betina nodded with appropriate seriousness while noting how Sarah's tone suggested these weren't routine military cases but something more sensitive. Her assignment was beginning to make sense. Whoever had placed her here suspected that St. Catherine's involvement with Blackwood went beyond standard base medical services. A code alarm chimed through the department as Sarah handed her the morning's patient assignment sheet. "Emergency incoming training exercise casualty from the base. Probably a good opportunity for you to observe our military patient protocols." As they moved toward the trauma bay, Betina felt the familiar surge of adrenaline. That came with high-stakes situations. Whether in a cockpit at 50,000 feet or in an emergency room, she thrived in environments where expertise and calm judgment could mean the difference between life and death. What none of her new colleagues could know was that her nursing skills, while genuine, represented only a fraction of her capabilities. Behind the facade of the competent travel nurse walked a pilot whose classified missions had shaped NATO's understanding of next-generation aerial warfare and whose presence at St. Catherine's was about to uncover secrets that would challenge everything the medical staff believed about their mission. St. Catherine's Medical Center stood as a monument to cutting-edge healthcare, its modern glass facade reflecting the morning sunlight across meticulously maintained grounds. The facility's reputation extended far beyond regional medicine. It consistently ranked among Europe's top trauma centers and maintained exclusive partnerships with military research institutions that most staff members only vaguely understood. Betina spent her first week methodically learning the hospital's rhythms, while maintaining her cover as an eager but unremarkable travel nurse. She arrived early each shift, volunteered for challenging cases, and demonstrated the kind of clinical competence that earned respect without drawing excessive attention. To her colleagues, she appeared to be exactly what her credentials suggested: a skilled professional content to work. Demanding emergency medicine rotations. The hospital's layout revealed sophisticated security measures, disguised as standard medical infrastructure. Certain elevators required additional access cards, specific wings showed restricted entry protocols, and communication systems included encrypted channels that civilian hospitals rarely possessed. Most telling was the discreet helipad visible from upper-floor windows, designed for aircraft that never appeared on public flight schedules. Dr. Marcus Webb, the emergency department director, embodied the facility's prestigious reputation. A former military flight surgeon with distinguished silver hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to command authority, he moved through the department with quiet confidence. His interactions with staff revealed both medical expertise and an understanding of operational security that went beyond typical hospital administration. "The new travel nurse is fitting in well," Sarah Chin mentioned to Dr. Webb during a staff meeting Betina observed from across the nurses' station. "Excellent clinical skills and remarkably calm under pressure. Almost like she's had crisis management training." Webb's response carried subtle interest. "Military background?" "Nothing in her file suggests it. European hospitals, emergency rotations, standard civilian experience. But there's something about her approach to high-stress situations that seems practiced." Betina continued organizing patient charts while listening to their conversation, noting how Webb's attention had sharpened at the mention of her stress management capabilities. In her experience, people with military intelligence backgrounds developed radar for others who shared similar training. Even when both parties maintained civilian covers, the afternoon brought her first exposure to the special cases Sarah had mentioned. A priority transport arrived from Blackwood AFB officially, a training accident requiring specialized trauma care. But as Betina assisted with the patient's treatment, She observed details that contradicted the cover story. The patient's injuries were consistent with ejection. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Seat trauma at extremely high altitude, showing decompression effects and thermal exposure patterns that only occurred during experimental flight testing. His flight suit, partially visible beneath emergency blankets, bore no standard military markings, but showed the distinctive material composition used in stealth aircraft. Programs. Dr. Webb supervised the treatment personally, issuing instructions with precision that indicated extensive experience with such cases. Standard Protocol 7, he told the team, using terminology that wasn't part of normal emergency medicine vocabulary. Full environmental screening and maintain complete documentation isolation. The other medical staff followed these unusual procedures without question, suggesting this wasn't their first encounter with patients whose cases required extraordinary confidentiality measures. Betina participated in the treatment, while carefully noting the specialized equipment used and the non-standard medical protocols applied. As the patient stabilized and was transferred to a restricted wing of the hospital, Dr. Webb approached Betina with a measuring look. "Impressive work today, Nurse Anton. Your response to the unusual case parameters showed excellent adaptability." "Thank you, doctor," she replied with appropriate modesty. "I've always believed in following established protocols, even when they're outside normal experience." Webb nodded slowly, his expression suggesting he was evaluating more than her medical performance. St. Catherine's occasionally handles cases that require flexibility in approach. Not all emergency medicine follows textbook parameters. The conversation carried undertones that both participants understood, but couldn't acknowledge directly. Webb was probing to determine whether she could be trusted with information beyond her apparent clearance level, while Betina needed to demonstrate reliability without revealing her actual background. Later that evening, as her shift concluded, Betina reviewed the day's observations. The hospital was clearly functioning as more than a civilian medical facility. It was integral to classified programs operating from Blackwood AFB, the specialized trauma protocols, restricted patient areas, and Dr. Webb's careful evaluation of her reaction to unusual cases all pointed to St. Catherine's role in supporting experimental military operations. Her assignment was becoming clearer. Someone suspected that the hospital's involvement with classified programs had evolved beyond its official mandate. Whether through gradual mission creep, deliberate deception, or something more troubling, St. Catherine's appeared to be operating outside the boundaries of standard military medical support. As she walked to her temporary apartment near the hospital, Betina's trained mind was already identifying the investigative approaches that would reveal the truth. She had spent years evaluating experimental systems that didn't perform as advertised. Now she would apply those same analytical skills to uncovering what St. Catherine's Medical Center was really doing for the highly classified programs at Blackwood AFB. What she couldn't yet know was that her presence had already been noticed by people who understood exactly what kind of threat a skilled operative could pose to carefully constructed deceptions. By her second week at St. Catherine's, Betina had established herself as the reliable but unremarkable travel nurse that most permanent staff expected temporary workers to be. The day shift nurses appreciated her clinical competence but maintained the subtle distance typical between established teams and rotating personnel. To them, she represented capable hands during busy periods, nothing more significant than another professional passing through their department. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the assistant emergency director, embodied this dismissive attitude with particular clarity. A brilliant physician with an impressive record in trauma surgery, Vasquez had built her career on precision, hierarchy, and maintaining clear boundaries between different levels of medical authority. During morning rounds, she addressed Betina with the polite condescension reserved for temporary staff, whose opinions were neither sought nor particularly valued. "Nurse Anton," Vasquez said during a case review meeting, "your charting on yesterday's priority transport shows excessive detail in areas outside nursing scope. Please remember that travel nurses are expected to focus on direct patient care, rather than operational observations." Betina accepted the criticism with appropriate deference while noting that Vasquez's concern wasn't about medical documentation, but about the specific details she had recorded. Her notes had included observations about the patient's equipment, treatment protocols, and the unusual coordination between hospital staff and Blackwood, personnel details that suggested someone was monitoring how much attention she paid to the classified cases. The established nursing staff followed Vasquez's lead in maintaining professional distance. During break room conversations, they discussed hospital politics, patient cases, and personal lives with the easy familiarity of people who had worked together for years. When Betina joined these informal gatherings, conversations became more guarded, topics shifting to neutral territory that excluded temporary personnel from sensitive information. "Travel nurses see a lot of different facilities," commented Maria Santos, a senior nurse with 15 years at St. Catherine's, during one such break room discussion. "But they don't really understand how specialized institutions like ours operate. Different protocols, different patient populations, different security requirements." The message was clear. Betina was an outsider whose temporary status meant she couldn't be trusted with information about the hospital's unique role. Her colleagues were polite but firm in maintaining boundaries that kept her focused on routine nursing duties rather than the more sensitive aspects of St. Catherine's operations. This dismissive treatment actually served Betina's investigative purposes perfectly. People who underestimated her capabilities were more likely to reveal information inadvertently, assuming she lacked the background to understand its significance. She used their assumptions as camouflage, asking questions that appeared to reflect curiosity rather than trained intelligence gathering. Dr. Webb maintained professional courtesy but showed no inclination to include her in discussions about the specialized cases that arrived from Blackwood. When military patients required treatment, she was assigned to supporting roles that kept her busy with routine tasks, while senior staff handled the classified aspects of their care. The pattern was deliberate, using her nursing skills while limiting her exposure to sensitive information. The hospital's social hierarchy reinforced these limitations through subtle but effective means. Betina's temporary ID badge displayed different colors than permanent staff. Her system access was restricted to basic nursing functions, and her work schedule was managed to minimize overlap with the most sensitive cases. She was being contained within a carefully constructed bubble that utilized her medical expertise while preventing deeper insight into St. Catherine's classified operations. During a particularly busy afternoon, Betina observed this containment strategy in action. 3 priority transports arrived simultaneously from Blackwood, officially training accidents, but showing injury patterns that suggested experimental aircraft testing. While senior staff coordinated the complex treatment protocols, she found herself assigned to inventory management and equipment preparation, essential but peripheral work that kept her away from direct patient contact. "Travel nurses often feel excluded from major cases," Sarah Chun explained with genuine sympathy as Betina organized supplies in the storage area. "But complex military cases require established teams with security clearances. It's nothing personal, just operational necessity." The explanation was reasonable and delivered with kindness, but Betina recognized it as another layer of the systematic exclusion designed to limit her access to sensitive information. Her colleagues weren't being deliberately obstructive. They were following protocols designed to protect classified operations from unauthorized observation. As she worked in the supply area, Betina could hear fragments of conversation from the trauma bays where the priority patients were being treated, references to thermal exposure beyond normal parameters, pressure differential injuries consistent with extreme altitude, and equipment recovery protocols painted a picture of experimental flight testing that went far beyond routine military operations. The dismissive reception she received from permanent staff was both frustrating and valuable. It confirmed that St. Catherine's was indeed involved in highly classified activities that required careful information control. More importantly, it suggested that someone had implemented security protocols specifically designed to limit what temporary personnel could observe or understand about the hospital's true mission. By the end of her second week, Betina had become effectively invisible to most of the permanent staff, exactly the position she needed to begin the real work of uncovering what St. Catherine's Medical Center was hiding behind its facade of routine military medical support. 3 weeks into her assignment at St. Catherine's, Betina received her first secure communication from her handler through a seemingly routine medical supply delivery. Hidden within the documentation for a shipment of standard trauma equipment was a single line that appeared to be a product serial number, but actually contained encoded instructions for a clandestine meeting. That evening, she drove to a small cafe 30 kilometers from the hospital, taking a circuitous route that allowed her to verify she wasn't being followed. Colonel Andreas Mueller, her NATO intelligence contact, sat at a corner table reading a newspaper, every inch the image of a businessman enjoying coffee after a long day. Only Betina recognized the subtle signs that identified him as one of Europe's most experienced military intelligence operatives. "The nursing assignment suits you," Mueller commented without looking up from his newspaper as she took the seat across from him. "Though I suspect your patients have no idea they're being treated by someone who's logged more flight hours in classified aircraft than most test pilots see in their entire careers." Betina ordered coffee from the waitress before responding quietly. "The hospital's involvement with Blackwood goes deeper than standard base medical support. They're treating casualties from experimental programs that officially don't exist." Mueller folded his newspaper with practiced casualness. "Tell me what you've observed." Over the next 30 minutes, Betina provided a detailed briefing on her findings. The specialized trauma protocols, the restricted patient wings, the injury patterns consistent with extreme altitude testing, and most concerning, the systematic security measures designed to limit what temporary staff could observe about classified cases. "The patients I've seen show trauma consistent with ejection at altitudes exceeding 30,000 meters, she reported. Equipment fragments recovered with the patients suggest stealth technology beyond anything in public development programs. Dr. Webb and his team handle these cases with procedures that indicate extensive experience with such unusual medical situations." Mueller's expression remained neutral, but his questions revealed the significance of her observations. "How many such cases have you witnessed?" 12 confirmed, possibly more that were handled during shifts when I wasn't present. "The frequency suggests ongoing experimental operations rather than isolated incidents." "And the medical staff's reactions?" "They follow specialized protocols without question, indicating this isn't new for them." Dr. Webb uses terminology that suggests military intelligence background, and several nurses show training beyond standard emergency medicine. Mueller nodded slowly, processing information that confirmed intelligence concerns that had prompted her assignment. 3 months ago, NATO intercepted communications suggesting unauthorized technology transfers from classified aerospace programs. The source appeared to be medical data from experimental flight testing, biometric information, stress analysis, performance parameters that could be used to reverse engineer pilot protection systems. The revelation shifted Betina's understanding of her mission from routine surveillance to active counterintelligence. "You suspect St. Catherine's is compromising classified information through their medical data?" "We suspect someone is using the hospital's legitimate medical role to access and exploit information about experimental programs. Pilot performance data, equipment specifications, operational parameters, all valuable intelligence if properly analyzed. Mueller explained that her nursing cover provided ideal positioning to investigate these suspicions. Medical data theft required insider access, technical expertise, and the ability to identify which information had strategic value. Someone with detailed knowledge of experimental aviation would be perfectly positioned to recognize what medical information could compromise classified programs. Your assignment has 3 phases, Mueller continued, his voice barely audible above the cafe's ambient noise. First, identify how classified medical data is being accessed and potentially compromised. Second, determine who has the expertise to recognize valuable information within routine medical records. Third, document evidence that can support intervention, without revealing the investigation's existence. Betina accepted the mission parameters while understanding their complexity. She would need to maintain her nursing cover while conducting counterintelligence operations, identify security vulnerabilities without triggering defensive responses, and gather evidence that could stop information theft without compromising ongoing classified programs. There's one additional complication, Mueller added, checking his watch as if concerned about the time. Our communications intercepts suggest the information theft may be coordinated with foreign intelligence services. This isn't just unauthorized data access, it could be organized espionage using the hospital as a collection point. The implications were staggering. If St. Catherine's was being used as a platform for foreign intelligence gathering, the compromised information could include details about NATO's most advanced aerospace programs, pilot performance data, equipment specifications, and operational parameters could be assembled into comprehensive intelligence that revealed both capabilities and vulnerabilities of classified systems. What's my communication protocol? Betina asked, already planning how to adapt her investigative approach for a counterespionage mission. Standard supply deliveries will continue to carry encoded instructions. Emergency contact requires the medical supply emergency replacement protocol order specific equipment using designated codes. Under no circumstances should you take direct action against suspected foreign operatives without explicit authorization. As they prepared to leave the cafe separately, Mueller provided one final piece of crucial information. Intelligence analysis suggests the information theft has been ongoing for at least 18 months. Whoever is responsible has had extensive time to establish sophisticated collection methods and security protocols. Assume that any unusual behavior on your part will be noticed and investigated. Driving back toward her apartment, Betina reflected on how her assignment had evolved from routine surveillance to complex counterintelligence operations. She was no longer just investigating suspicious medical protocols, she was hunting for foreign spies who were using her new workplace to steal some of NATO's most classified aerospace secrets. The challenge ahead required her to balance maintaining perfect nursing cover while conducting counterespionage operations against potentially experienced foreign intelligence operatives. One mistake could compromise not only her mission, but also the classified programs that St. Catherine's was supposed to protect. Tomorrow, she would return to the hospital not just as an undercover pilot pretending to be a nurse, but as a counterintelligence operative working to prevent one of the most sophisticated espionage operations NATO had encountered in years. Armed with new understanding of her mission's true scope, Betina began her 4th week at St. Catherine's with heightened awareness of every detail that might reveal espionage activities. She arrived each morning 30 minutes early, using the quiet pre-shift period to observe patterns in computer access, communication protocols, and staff interactions that could indicate unauthorized information gathering. Her nursing duties provided perfect cover for systematic surveillance. Moving between patient rooms, supply areas, and administrative stations, gave her legitimate reasons to be present throughout the hospital while conducting what appeared to be routine medical work. She methodically documented everything: who accessed which computer systems, which staff members showed unusual interest in classified patients, and how medical data flowed through the hospital's information networks. The first significant observation came during a routine equipment inventory in the trauma storage area. While cataloging supplies, Betina noticed that certain high-tech monitoring devices showed access logs that didn't correspond to their documented usage for patient care. Sophisticated biometric sensors, advanced imaging equipment, and specialized diagnostic tools were being activated during periods when no classified patients were present, suggesting someone was using medical equipment for purposes beyond healthcare. Dr. Marcus Webb's behavior patterns revealed subtle but telling inconsistencies. During standard civilian cases, he maintained professional efficiency typical of experienced emergency physicians. But when handling military patients from Blackwood, his approach shifted to include procedures that appeared medical but actually gathered data beyond clinical necessity. Extended monitoring periods, additional diagnostic tests, and comprehensive biometric assessments that exceeded treatment requirements. Thorough documentation is essential for military cases, Webb explained. To staff during a team meeting, Betina observed while organizing nearby supplies. Complete physiological profiles, stress response patterns, and equipment interaction data. The base requires comprehensive medical analysis for their safety programs. The explanation sounded reasonable, but Betina's aviation background revealed its true significance. The medical data, Webb described, included precisely the information that foreign intelligence services would need to understand pilot performance parameters, equipment limitations, and operational stress factors of classified aircraft programs. Her investigation expanded to include the hospital's information technology infrastructure. During routine patient chart updates, she observed that certain terminals had additional network connections beyond standard medical systems. These secondary data pathways weren't documented in the hospital's official IT protocols, suggesting unauthorized modification of computer systems to enable data collection or transmission. The breakthrough came during her observation of Dr. Elena Vasquez's work patterns. While Vasquez maintained her dismissive attitude toward Betina as temporary staff, her behavior around classified cases showed remarkable sophistication in data collection. She consistently positioned herself to observe specialized monitoring equipment, asked specific questions about pilot stress responses, and showed particular interest in equipment fragments recovered with injured patients. More revealing was Vasquez's language during these cases. While other staff used standard medical terminology, she occasionally employed technical aviation terms that suggested knowledge beyond medical training. References to G-force tolerance parameters, pressure suit effectiveness, and ejection sequence timing indicated understanding of experimental aircraft systems that emergency physicians wouldn't typically possess. Betina's most significant discovery occurred during a late evening shift when she observed Vasquez accessing computer terminals after completing her official duties. Using her legitimate medical credentials, Vasquez retrieved patient files from classified cases, but her review process focused on technical data rather than medical outcomes. She systematically extracted biometric information, stress analysis, and equipment specifications, assembling precisely the intelligence that Mueller had warned was being stolen. The observation required careful positioning to avoid detection. Betina used routine cleaning duties as cover, working in areas that provided sightlines to Vasquez's computer access while maintaining the appearance of standard housekeeping responsibilities. The risk was considerable. If Vasquez recognized surveillance, the entire investigation could be compromised. What she witnessed confirmed the worst fears of NATO intelligence. Vasquez wasn't just accessing classified medical data, She was systematically collecting information about pilot performance, equipment capabilities, and operational parameters that could reveal critical vulnerabilities in experimental aircraft. Programs. The medical data theft was organized, sophisticated, and targeted at NATO's most sensitive aerospace technologies. Even more concerning was Vasquez's method of data handling. After collecting information from multiple classified cases, she transferred selected data to portable storage devices that weren't part of the hospital's official systems. These devices disappeared into her personal belongings, suggesting a well-established process for removing classified information from the secure hospital environment. Betina documented these observations using techniques learned during her intelligence training, creating seemingly innocent nursing notes that actually contained detailed surveillance reports. Her patient care documentation included coded information about computer access times, data transfer activities, and personnel behavior patterns that could support prosecution of espionage activities. By the end of her systematic observation phase, Betina had identified not only how classified information was being stolen but also who was responsible for the theft. Dr. Elena Vasquez was conducting sophisticated espionage operations using her medical credentials as cover, systematically compromising NATO's most classified aerospace programs through exploitation of patient data from experimental flight testing. The challenge now was gathering sufficient evidence to prove espionage activities without alerting Vasquez to the investigation. One wrong move could trigger defensive actions that would destroy evidence and potentially compromise other classified programs beyond St. Catherine's involvement. As Betina delved deeper into her surveillance of Dr. Vasquez's activities, she uncovered a pattern of information theft that exceeded even NATO intelligence's worst-case scenarios. The espionage operation wasn't limited to opportunistic data collection. It was a systematically planned intelligence-gathering program that had been carefully developed over years to exploit the hospital's unique access to classified aerospace programs. Her breakthrough came during a routine night shift when she discovered Vasquez accessing the hospital's secure communication systems outside normal working hours. Using her medical credentials and knowledge of hospital protocols, Vasquez had established unauthorized communication channels that bypass standard security monitoring. These covert connections provided direct access to external networks that weren't part of St. Catherine's legitimate medical infrastructure. Through careful observation from the adjacent supply room, Betina watched as Vasquez transmitted compressed data files containing detailed information from classified patient cases. The transmission protocols suggested sophisticated encryption and routing through multiple servers, techniques consistent with professional intelligence operations rather than casual information theft. More disturbing was the scope of information being compromised. Vasquez wasn't just stealing current medical data from experimental flight testing. She had systematically accessed historical records spanning the entire period of St. Catherine's involvement with Blackwood AFB, patient files, equipment specifications, operational parameters, and pilot performance data from dozens of classified programs had been collected and transmitted to unknown recipients. The historical analysis revealed that the espionage operation had evolved alongside the hospital's expanding role in supporting experimental aerospace programs. As Blackwood's flight testing became more sophisticated and classified, Vasquez had adapted her collection methods to capture increasingly sensitive information. What began as opportunistic data theft had become comprehensive intelligence gathering that threatened the security of multiple NATO aerospace programs. Betina's aviation expertise allowed her to understand the true significance of the stolen information in ways that traditional counterintelligence operatives might miss. The medical data from experimental flight testing contained embedded information about aircraft performance, pilot protection systems, and operational limitations that could be reverse engineered to reveal critical vulnerabilities in classified Aircraft designs, pilot stress response patterns could reveal the operational envelope of experimental aircraft. Equipment failure analysis could expose design weaknesses that enemy forces could exploit. Biometric data from extreme flight conditions could inform the development of countermeasures against NATO's most advanced aerospace technologies. Even more troubling was evidence that Vasquez's espionage activities were coordinated with external intelligence services. Her communication patterns included coded acknowledgments and specific data requests that suggested her collection efforts were being directed by foreign operatives with detailed knowledge of NATO aerospace programs. This wasn't a lone actor stealing information for personal gain. It was a professional intelligence operation using the hospital as a collection platform. The discovery that shocked Betina most was evidence that other staff members were either knowingly or unknowingly supporting the espionage operation. Dr. Webb's expanded medical protocols weren't just unnecessarily thorough. They were specifically designed to generate the types of data that Vasquez required for her intelligence collection. Whether Webb was a willing participant or an unwitting facilitator remained unclear, but his procedures were perfectly aligned with espionage requirements. Several nursing staff members showed patterns of behavior that suggested possible recruitment or manipulation by Vasquez. Extended access to classified patient areas, unusual interest in technical equipment specifications, and subtle modifications to standard documentation procedures all indicated that the espionage operation had developed a network of support within St. Catherine's medical staff. The most chilling discovery was evidence that the information theft had directly contributed to foreign intelligence understanding of NATO's experimental aircraft capabilities. Intercepted communications referenced specific technical details that could only have originated from the medical data being stolen from St. Catherine's. The espionage operation had successfully compromised multiple classified programs, potentially endangering both pilots and national security. Betina's analysis revealed that the stolen information was being used to develop countermeasures against the NATO aerospace technologies. Enemy forces had gained detailed understanding of pilot performance, limitations, equipment vulnerabilities, and operational parameters that could be exploited during potential conflicts. The medical data theft had created strategic advantages for foreign powers that could prove decisive in future military confrontations. As she documented these discoveries, Betina understood that her investigation had uncovered one of the most successful espionage operations in recent NATO history. The systematic theft of classified aerospace information through exploitation of medical data represented a sophisticated attack on the foundation of Western air superiority. The evidence she had gathered was sufficient to expose the espionage network, but taking action required careful consideration of operational security. Premature intervention could trigger defensive responses that would destroy evidence and alert other intelligence operations to NATO's awareness of the compromise. The challenge was stopping ongoing information theft while preserving the investigation's ability to identify the full scope of the espionage network. More importantly, Betina realized that her own cover might be compromised. Someone with Vasquez's sophisticated understanding of security protocols would eventually notice patterns in Betina's behavior that suggested surveillance rather than routine nursing duties. The window for gathering evidence was closing, and soon she would need to choose between maintaining her investigation and ensuring her own safety. The disturbing discovery that a trusted medical facility was being used as a platform for comprehensive espionage against NATO's most classified aerospace programs represented a crisis that extended far beyond St. Catherine's Medical Center. The stolen information could compromise the security of experimental aircraft programs across multiple allied nations, potentially shifting the balance of air power in favor of hostile foreign governments. Betina's attempt to communicate her findings to NATO intelligence revealed the fundamental challenge of operating under deep cover. The very disguise that enabled her investigation also undermined her credibility when reporting critical discoveries. Her coded messages through medical supply deliveries could convey basic information, but the sophisticated espionage network she had uncovered required detailed briefings that were impossible through standard covert communication channels. Emergency Contact Protocol. Mueller had provided required ordering specific medical equipment using designated codes to trigger urgent meetings. But implementing this system without arousing suspicion proved nearly impossible. As a travel nurse with limited authority, Betina couldn't justify ordering expensive specialized equipment that wasn't directly related to patient care. Any unusual supply requests would be questioned by hospital administration and potentially alert Vasquez to surveillance activities. Her first attempt to establish emergency contact failed when Sarah Chun, the charge nurse, rejected her equipment. Request is outside normal nursing authority. Travel nurses don't have authorization for specialized monitoring devices, Sarah explained professionally. Those requisitions require departmental approval and specific medical justification. The rejection forced Betina to modify her approach, but every alternative carried significant risks. Attempting to bypass hospital protocols could expose her true identity, while delaying communication might allow the espionage operation to continue compromising classified programs. She was trapped between maintaining her cover and fulfilling her intelligence mission. Dr. Webb's behavior during this period suggested possible awareness of her unusual activities. While he maintained professional courtesy, his interactions became more guarded, with subtle questions about her previous nursing experience and observations about her exceptional attention to detail during classified cases. His inquiries appeared casual but followed patterns consistent with security assessment procedures. Your documentation of patient equipment specifications shows remarkable thoroughness, Webb commented during a staff meeting where Betina was reviewing supply inventories. Most nurses focus on medical care rather than technical details. Your background must include specialized training. The observation was delivered as professional praise, but Betina recognized it as probing designed to elicit information about her actual qualifications. Webb's medical intelligence background made him naturally suspicious of staff members who showed expertise beyond their apparent roles, particularly when that expertise aligned with sensitive security concerns. Even more challenging was Vasquez's increasing attention to her activities. During patient care rotations, Vasquez began positioning herself to observe Betina's work more closely, asking specific questions about her previous hospital experience and showing particular interest in her reactions to military patients from Blackwood. The scrutiny felt systematic rather than casual, suggesting possible counterintelligence awareness. Travel nurses often struggle with our specialized protocols, Vasquez mentioned during a break room conversation that felt like an interrogation disguised as professional mentoring. The complexity of our military cases requires staff with security awareness that temporary personnel typically lack. Have you worked with classified medical cases before? Betina's response required careful balance between maintaining her cover and avoiding responses that might trigger additional investigation. I've worked with various military hospitals across Europe, she replied truthfully while omitting the specific nature of her military experience. Each facility has unique protocols, but patient care fundamentals remain consistent. Vasquez's expression suggested this answer raised more questions than it resolved. Someone with her intelligence background would recognize that Betina's comfort with classified cases exceeded what most travel nurses would demonstrate, even those with extensive military hospital experience. The credibility challenge extended beyond individual interactions to systemic limitations in her ability to gather actionable intelligence. While she had identified the espionage operation and documented evidence of information theft, proving these activities to authorities outside the hospital required corroboration that her cover identity couldn't provide. Travel nurses had limited access to the types of detailed records and communication logs that would constitute legal evidence of espionage, her nursing credentials, carefully constructed to support her cover identity, actually undermined her ability to be taken seriously by security officials who weren't aware of her true background. Military intelligence reports from Nurse Betina Anton would carry less weight than identical information from squadron leader Betina Anton, but revealing her true identity would compromise the investigation and potentially endanger her safety. Situation became more desperate when she discovered evidence that Vasquez was preparing to transmit a comprehensive intelligence package containing detailed analysis of NATO's most recent experimental aircraft testing. The medical data from the latest Blackwood cases included information about prototype, stealth systems that represented years of development and billions in research investment. Once this information reached foreign intelligence services, the strategic advantage of these experimental programs would be permanently compromised. Betina realized that traditional intelligence protocols were inadequate for the immediate threat she had uncovered. The espionage operation was moving too quickly for standard counterintelligence response, and her communication limitations prevented adequate warning to NATO security services. She faced a choice between maintaining her cover and taking direct action to prevent irreversible damage to allied aerospace programs. The credibility challenge that had begun as a communication problem was evolving into a crisis of operational necessity. Sometimes preventing catastrophic intelligence compromise required abandoning established protocols and accepting the personal risks of direct intervention, even when such action might be disbelieved or dismissed by those who didn't understand the true scope of the threat. The morning of her 5th week at St. Catherine's brought news that transformed Betina's investigation from intelligence gathering to crisis prevention. A priority alert announced that NATO's most advanced experimental aircraft, the classified Aurora 7 stealth fighter, would conduct emergency landing procedures at Blackwood AFB following a test flight malfunction. The pilot and aircraft would be transported to St. Catherine's for specialized medical evaluation and equipment analysis. Betina understood immediately that this represented the most valuable intelligence opportunity the espionage operation had encountered. The Aurora 7 program represented the pinnacle of NATO aerospace technology, incorporating stealth capabilities, advanced materials, and pilot protection systems that were years ahead of any known foreign developments. Medical data from Aurora 7 testing would provide unprecedented insight into the aircraft's capabilities and limitations. Through her military aviation background, Betina knew details about the Aurora 7 that made this situation even more critical. The aircraft incorporated revolutionary pilot interface systems that created direct, neural connections between pilot consciousness and aircraft controls, enabling response times and maneuverability impossible with traditional flight systems. Medical analysis of Aurora 7 pilots revealed the physiological parameters necessary for successful interface with these advanced systems. This information, if stolen and analyzed by foreign intelligence services, could provide the foundation for developing both countermeasures against Aurora 7 capabilities and similar interface technologies that would eliminate NATO's aerospace superiority. The medical data from even a single Aurora 7 pilot could compromise decades of classified research and potentially shift the balance of global air power. Dr. Vasquez's behavior confirmed that she recognized the significance of this opportunity. Her preparation for the Aurora 7 case included accessing specialized monitoring equipment that hadn't been used for previous classified patients, reviewing technical documentation that exceeded standard medical requirements, and coordinating with external contacts through her covert communication channels. She was preparing for comprehensive intelligence collection on NATO's most classified aerospace program. Even more alarming was evidence that the Aurora 7 case had triggered activation of the broader espionage network Vasquez had developed within St. Catherine's. Staff members who had shown suspicious behavior patterns were being positioned for roles in the Aurora 7 medical evaluation, creating multiple collection points for sensitive information. The espionage operation was mobilizing its full capabilities for this unprecedented intelligence opportunity. Betina's analysis of the hospital's preparation revealed sophisticated planning that suggested advanced knowledge of the Aurora 7 emergency. The equipment being deployed, the staff assignments being made, and the communication protocols being established all indicated that Vasquez had received detailed briefings about the aircraft and pilot before the emergency was announced to hospital personnel. This suggested that the espionage network had penetrated Blackwood's operational security to a degree that endangered all classified programs. The stakes escalated further when Betina discovered that foreign intelligence services were actively coordinating with Vasquez for real-time data collection during the Aurora 7 case. Intercepted communication fragments revealed that external operatives would be positioned to receive immediate transmission of medical data, equipment specifications, and pilot interface parameters as soon as the evaluation began. The information would be analyzed and distributed to hostile governments within hours of collection. Time constraints made traditional intelligence response impossible. Even if Betina could establish emergency contact with NATO security services, investigating her reports and implementing protective measures would require days or weeks. The Aurora 7 pilot and aircraft would arrive at St. Catharines within 6 hours, providing insufficient time for conventional counterintelligence operations. The situation demanded immediate action that could only come from someone positioned within the hospital with both the authority and expertise to prevent the intelligence compromise. Betina realized that her unique combination of medical credentials, military aviation knowledge, and counterintelligence training made her the only person capable of stopping the espionage operation before irreversible damage occurred. The escalating stakes forced her to consider options that extended far beyond her original mission parameters. Preventing the Aurora 7 intelligence compromise might require revealing her true identity, directly confronting the espionage network, or taking action that would permanently compromise her cover but protect NATO's most classified aerospace programs. As morning shifted to afternoon and the Aurora 7's arrival approached, Betina understood that she faced the defining moment of her intelligence career. The decisions she made in the next few hours would determine whether NATO maintained its aerospace superiority or whether years of classified research would be handed to hostile foreign governments through the systematic exploitation of medical data. The espionage operation that had begun as sophisticated but contained information theft was about to achieve its ultimate objective: comprehensive compromise of NATO's most advanced aerospace technology. Unless someone with the knowledge, authority, and courage to act decisively intervened immediately, the balance of global air power could shift irreversibly in favor of hostile nations. The choice was no longer between maintaining cover and completing her mission. It was between personal safety and preventing a catastrophic intelligence disaster that could endanger Allied security for decades to come. Squadron leader Betina Anton would have to emerge from behind the facade of Nurse Betina Anton to protect the classified programs she had spent her career advancing. As the Aurora 7's arrival approached, Betina discovered that her investigation had triggered defensive responses from the espionage network that suggested her surveillance activities had been detected. Dr. Vasquez began implementing security measures designed to isolate potential threats while maintaining the appearance of normal hospital operations, creating a sophisticated counterintelligence environment that threatened to neutralize any intervention attempts. The first indication came when Betina found herself systematically excluded from Aurora 7 preparation activities through seemingly legitimate administrative decisions. Her duty roster was modified to assign her to routine cases in the hospital's civilian wing, far from the secure areas where the classified patient would be treated. The change was explained as standard protocol for temporary staff during sensitive military cases, but the timing suggested deliberate removal from the espionage operations target zone. Dr. Webb's role in this exclusion revealed the extent to which the espionage network had compromised hospital leadership. Whether through recruitment or manipulation, Webb was implementing security measures that protected Vasquez's intelligence collection while appearing to follow legitimate medical protocols. His coordination with Vasquez showed sophistication. That suggested professional intelligence training rather than casual cooperation. The Aurora 7 case requires our most experienced team, Webb explained to Betina during a private meeting that felt more like an interrogation than administrative. Discussion. Temporary staff, regardless of qualifications, cannot be involved in cases of this classification level. I'm sure you understand the security requirements. The conversation carried undertones that both participants recognized but couldn't acknowledge. Directly, Webb was probing to determine whether Betina represented a security threat, while simultaneously warning her away from the Aurora 7 case. His approach suggested awareness that her background exceeded her apparent nursing credentials, but uncertainty about her actual identity or mission. More troubling was evidence that Vasquez had activated additional security resources beyond the Vasquez hospital's normal capabilities. Personnel with obvious intelligence training appeared as medical consultants and security specialists, establishing surveillance and communication networks that exceeded anything required for standard patient care. The hospital was being transformed into a secure intelligence collection facility under the guise of enhanced medical security. These additional operatives showed particular interest in Betina's activities, conducting discreet surveillance that confirmed her cover had been compromised to some degree. While they hadn't identified her as a NATO intelligence operative, they recognized her as someone whose presence required monitoring and potential neutralization. The professional quality of their surveillance suggested coordination with foreign intelligence services rather than improvised hospital security. The opposition's sophistication became apparent when Betina attempted to access areas near the Aurora 7 preparation zone. Physical barriers, electronic surveillance, and human monitoring had been deployed to create multiple layers of security that would detect and deter any unauthorized observation. The espionage network was protecting its most valuable intelligence opportunity with resources that revealed extensive planning and external support. Even more concerning was evidence that the opposition had begun investigating her background through channels that could expose her true identity. Computer access. Logs showed unauthorized queries about her nursing credentials, employment history, and security clearances. Someone with sophisticated intelligence capabilities was conducting comprehensive background analysis that would eventually reveal the inconsistencies in her cover identity. Vasquez's behavior during this period confirmed that she suspected Betina represented some form of threat to the espionage operation. While maintaining professional courtesy, she began probing conversations designed to elicit information about Betina's true qualifications and mission. Her questions followed patterns consistent with counterintelligence assessment procedures, suggesting formal training in identifying and neutralizing enemy operatives. Your familiarity with classified medical protocols seems unusual for a travel nurse, Vasquez observed during a break room encounter that was clearly orchestrated rather than coincidental. Most temporary staff require extensive briefing before working with military cases, but you seem to understand security requirements intuitively. The mounting opposition created a tactical situation that threatened to prevent any effective intervention. In the Aurora 7 intelligence compromise, Betina was being systematically isolated from the target area, surveilled by professional operatives, and investigated by sophisticated intelligence resources. Traditional counterintelligence approaches would be ineffective. against an adversary that had anticipated potential interference and prepared comprehensive defensive measures. The situation was further complicated by evidence that the espionage network had contingency plans for dealing with discovered threats. Communication intercepts revealed protocols for neutralizing security risks through methods that ranged from administrative removal to more direct approaches that could endanger Betina's safety. The opposition was prepared to protect their intelligence. Operation through whatever means proved necessary. As afternoon approached and the Aurora 7's arrival grew imminent, Betina realized that conventional intervention methods would be insufficient against the sophisticated opposition she faced. The espionage network had transformed St. Catherine's into a fortress, designed to protect their intelligence collection while eliminating potential threats to their operation. The mounting opposition forced her to consider approaches that extended far beyond traditional intelligence protocols. Stopping the Aurora 7 compromise would require direct confrontation with professional adversaries who were prepared for such challenges and equipped with resources that matched or exceeded her own capabilities. Success would depend not on maintaining her cover or following established procedures, but on leveraging her unique combination of military aviation expertise, medical knowledge, and intelligence training in ways that the opposition couldn't anticipate or counter. The battle for NATO's most classified aerospace secrets was about to begin in earnest. As Betina assessed the overwhelming opposition arrayed against any intervention attempt, an unexpected conversation in the hospital cafeteria revealed a potential ally who could provide the access and credibility she desperately needed. Dr. James Morrison, the hospital's chief of cardiothoracic surgery, approached her table with an expression that suggested professional concern rather than casual conversation. "I've been observing some unusual patterns in our military case protocols," Morrison said quietly, settling into the chair across from her despite her obvious surprise at the interruption. "Equipment requisitions that exceed medical necessity, staff assignments that prioritize data collection over patient care, and communication procedures that seem designed for information extraction rather than treatment coordination." The observation revealed that Morrison had independently noticed the same anomalies that had triggered Betina's investigation. More importantly, his willingness to voice these concerns suggested integrity that could be trusted despite the compromised environment they both worked within. His senior position and impeccable reputation provided exactly the institutional credibility that Betina's cover identity lacked. Morrison continued his assessment with clinical precision. "Dr. Vasquez's approach to classified cases shows remarkable interest in technical specifications that have minimal relevance to medical treatment. Her documentation focuses on equipment performance, pilot stress parameters, and operational data that would be valuable for purposes other than healthcare." Betina realized that Morrison's medical background had led him to conclusions similar to her intelligence analysis, but from a different perspective. Where she saw espionage, he saw violation of medical ethics and patient confidentiality. Both assessments pointed to the same conclusion. Vasquez was exploiting her medical authority for unauthorized purposes. The Aurora 7 case preparation has elevated these concerns to a critical level, Morrison explained, his voice barely audible above the cafeteria's ambient noise. "The equipment being deployed, the staff being assigned, and the protocols being implemented all suggest comprehensive data collection that exceeds any legitimate medical requirement." The conversation represented a moment of decision for Betina. Morrison's observations provided an opportunity to gain a powerful ally, but revealing her true mission carried significant risks. If Morrison was somehow connected to the espionage network, her disclosure could compromise the entire investigation. However, the mounting opposition made independent action increasingly impossible. "Dr. Morrison," she began carefully, "what if I told you that your observations about data collection were accurate, but the purposes were more serious than medical ethics violations?" Morrison's expression sharpened with professional interest. I would ask what evidence supports that assessment and what actions might be appropriate to address the situation. Over the next 20 minutes, Betina provided a carefully edited version of her findings that emphasized the security implications without revealing her intelligence background. She described the systematic data collection, the unauthorized communication channels, and the evidence of coordination with external parties. Morrison listened with the analytical attention of a surgeon evaluating complex medical information. "You're suggesting espionage activities," Morrison concluded after reviewing her observations. "Foreign intelligence collection using medical data as a cover for stealing classified information about experimental aircraft programs." His acceptance of this assessment reflected both intellectual honesty and professional concern that transcended institutional loyalty. Morrison's primary commitment was to medical ethics and patient protection, values that aligned with preventing the exploitation of classified medical cases for espionage purposes. "The Aurora 7 pilot will be under my direct medical supervision," Morrison explained, revealing the opportunity that made their alliance potentially decisive. "As chief of cardiothoracic surgery, I have ultimate authority over treatment protocols and can override assignments that don't serve legitimate medical purposes." The revelation transformed Betina's tactical situation from isolated opposition to coordinated intervention. Morrison's medical authority provided legitimate access to the Aurora 7 case, while his reputation offered credibility that could challenge Vasquez's espionage activities without triggering immediate defensive responses. Their partnership required careful coordination to avoid alerting the espionage network to their collaboration. Morrison would use his medical authority to modify Aurora 7 protocols in ways that limited data collection opportunities, while Betina would provide intelligence about Vasquez's specific collection methods and communication procedures. "I'll need detailed information about the technical data Vasquez typically targets," Morrison explained as they prepared to implement their intervention plan. "Understanding her intelligence requirements will help me design medical protocols that provide necessary patient care while preventing unauthorized data collection." Betina's aviation expertise proved crucial for this coordination. Her knowledge of experimental aircraft systems allowed her to identify which medical data would be most valuable for foreign intelligence services, enabling Morrison to modify protocols in ways that protected classified information while maintaining appropriate patient care. The unlikely alliance between a cardiovascular surgeon committed to medical ethics and an undercover intelligence operative protecting classified aerospace programs represented their only chance to prevent catastrophic intelligence compromise. Morrison provided the institutional authority and medical expertise necessary for intervention, while Betina contributed the intelligence background and technical knowledge required to understand and counter the espionage operation. As the Aurora 7's arrival grew imminent, both allies understood that their success would depend on perfect coordination and unwavering commitment to preventing foreign intelligence from obtaining NATO's most classified aerospace secrets. The battle to protect the Aurora 7 program was about to begin, with two unlikely partners standing against a sophisticated espionage network that had spent years preparing for exactly this opportunity. Their collaboration would determine whether NATO maintained its aerospace superiority or whether decades of classified research would be compromised through the systematic exploitation of medical data by foreign intelligence services operating within St. Catherine's Medical Center. The Aurora 7's emergency landing at Blackwood AFB triggered immediate activation of St. Catherine's classified patient protocols, but the coordinated intervention by Betina and Dr. Morrison had already begun reshaping how the medical evaluation would proceed. As the pilot was transported to the hospital under maximum security conditions, Morrison implemented modified treatment protocols that appeared medically standard but systematically eliminated Opportunities for unauthorized data collection, major. Alina Reyes will require comprehensive cardiovascular assessment following her ejection sequence activation, Morrison announced to the assembled medical team as the Aurora 7 pilot arrived. His clinical authority was absolute, and his decision to personally supervise the case prevented Vasquez from assuming primary responsibility for the most sensitive aspects of treatment. Betina observed the pilot's arrival with professional interest. That extended beyond her nursing role. Major Reyes showed the distinctive physiological markers of someone who had interfaced with advanced neural flight control systems, subtle neurological responses, and enhanced cognitive processing that resulted from extended exposure to experimental aircraft technologies. This medical data, if properly analyzed, would reveal critical information about Aurora 7, capabilities that foreign intelligence had been seeking for years. That the espionage network's response to Morrison's intervention revealed both their sophistication and their desperation to access Aurora 7 intelligence. Dr. Vasquez immediately challenged Morrison's protocols through administrative channels, citing standard procedures that would have granted her access to the specialized monitoring equipment necessary for comprehensive data collection. Dr. Morrison, the established protocols for experimental aircraft casualties require interdisciplinary assessment, Vasquez argued during a tense consultation outside Major Reyes's treatment room. My expertise in aerospace medicine is specifically relevant to this case, and limiting my involvement could compromise patient care. Morrison's response demonstrated both medical authority and growing awareness of the security implications. Major Reyes's primary medical concerns are cardiovascular stability following extreme physiological stress. My protocols will address those requirements comprehensively while maintaining appropriate security for classified cases. During this confrontation, Betina positioned herself within hearing range while maintaining the appearance of routine nursing duties. Her intelligence training allowed her to recognize that Morrison's modified protocols were successfully preventing Vasquez from accessing the specific types of data most valuable for espionage purposes, while Vasquez's persistence revealed the extent of her intelligence collection requirements. The critical evidence gathering phase began when Betina discovered that Vasquez was attempting to circumvent Morrison's authority through alternative access methods. Using her legitimate medical credentials, Vasquez had scheduled consultations with Major Reyes that would provide opportunities for unauthorized data collection despite Morrison's primary authority over the case. More significantly, Betina intercepted communications indicating that foreign intelligence operatives were positioned outside the hospital, prepared to receive real-time transmission of Aurora 7 data as soon as Vasquez could collect it. The espionage network had invested too much in this opportunity to accept Morrison's interference without implementing backup plans. The evidence she needed came during a high-risk surveillance operation that required her to access Vasquez's private office during the evening shift. Using her nursing credentials and knowledge of hospital security protocols, Betina entered the office under the pretext of updating medical supply inventories, a legitimate responsibility that provided cover for searching Vasquez's computer systems and communication devices. What she discovered exceeded even her expectations for the espionage operation's scope and sophistication. Vasquez's secure files contained detailed intelligence assessments of multiple NATO aerospace programs, comprehensive analysis of pilot performance data from dozens of classified cases, and communication logs showing coordination with foreign intelligence services spanning several years. The Aurora 7 files revealed the true significance of this case for foreign intelligence. Technical specifications for the aircraft's neural interface systems, pilot selection criteria for advanced consciousness machine integration, and performance parameters for stealth capabilities that exceeded publicly acknowledged technology. This information would allow hostile governments to develop both countermeasures against Aurora 7 capabilities and similar technologies that could eliminate NATO's aerospace advantages. Even more damaging was evidence that Vasquez's intelligence collection had been coordinated with insider knowledge from Blackwood AFB itself. Someone within the classified research facility was providing advance information about experimental programs, pilot assignments, and testing schedules that enabled the espionage network to optimize their data collection efforts. The communications logs revealed that tonight's Aurora 7 case represented the culmination of a multi-year intelligence operation designed to obtain comprehensive information about NATO's most advanced aerospace technologies. Foreign intelligence services had positioned resources specifically for this opportunity, and failure to obtain Aurora 7 data would represent a catastrophic loss for their intelligence objectives. As Betina copied these files using specialized equipment concealed within her nursing supplies, she realized that the evidence she was gathering would be sufficient, not only to expose the espionage network, but also to identify the insider at Blackwood who was enabling the intelligence compromise. The scope of the operation extended far beyond St. Catherine's Medical Center, to include penetration of NATO's most classified aerospace research facilities. The risk of discovery during this evidence gathering was enormous. If Vasquez returned to her office unexpectedly, or if the surveillance network detected unauthorized access to secure computer systems, Betina's cover would be irreversibly compromised and her safety endangered. The professional intelligence operatives supporting Vasquez would not hesitate to eliminate threats to their mission through whatever means proved necessary. As she completed the data extraction and prepared to leave Vasquez's office, Betina understood that the evidence she now possessed represented the key to preventing catastrophic intelligence compromise. The files contained proof of systematic espionage, identification of foreign intelligence coordination, and documentation of insider collaboration that would enable NATO security services to neutralize the entire network. However, the same evidence that could stop the espionage operation also made her an immediate target for elimination. Once Vasquez discovered that her secure files had been accessed, the espionage network would implement aggressive countermeasures designed to protect their operation and eliminate anyone who threatened their mission success. The critical evidence gathering phase was complete, but the most dangerous part of her mission was about to begin. Betina now possessed information that could save NATO's aerospace programs, but delivering that intelligence to the appropriate authorities while protecting both Major Reyes and herself would require courage, skill, and coordination that would test every aspect of her training and experience. The morning after Betina's evidence-gathering operation, the espionage network's response confirmed that her intrusion had been detected through sophisticated security monitoring that she hadn't anticipated. Dr. Vasquez arrived at the hospital with additional personnel who were clearly intelligence operatives rather than medical staff, and their immediate focus on Major Reyes's treatment area suggested preparation for aggressive action to obtain Aurora 7 data. Despite Morrison's protective protocols, the confrontation began during what appeared to be a routine medical consultation. When Vasquez brought her specialists into Major Reyes's room under the pretext of conducting advanced neurological assessments, Morrison's objections were overruled by hospital administration, who had apparently received pressure from sources claiming greater authority than the hospital's medical leadership. Dr. Morrison, these specialists have been specifically requested by Blackwood AFB to conduct comprehensive evaluation of Major Reyes's cognitive systems following her exposure to experimental aircraft interfaces, announced Dr. Patricia Hendricks, the hospital's chief administrator, as she entered the treatment room with obvious discomfort about the situation she was implementing. Betina observed this development from the nursing station while maintaining her cover role, but her intelligence analysis immediately recognized that the specialists were foreign operatives whose presence in a NATO medical facility represented unprecedented security compromise. Their equipment wasn't standard medical technology but sophisticated, monitoring devices designed for intelligence collection rather than patient care. The forced revelation began when one of the supposed specialists directed questions toward Betina that revealed knowledge of her true background. Nurse Anton, your familiarity with aerospace medicine protocols seems exceptional for someone with standard emergency nursing experience. Perhaps you could assist with the neural interface assessment procedures. The question was delivered as professional consultation, but Betina recognized it as a probe designed to force her into revealing expertise that would contradict her cover identity. The operative knew enough about her background to understand that she possessed knowledge of experimental aircraft systems and was attempting to manipulate her into demonstrating that knowledge in front of witnesses. Dr. Morrison's intervention prevented the immediate exposure but created a new crisis when he challenged the specialists' authority and demanded verification of their credentials through legitimate military channels. Before any experimental procedures are conducted on Major Reyes, I require confirmation that these specialists have appropriate clearance and that their protocols have been approved by proper medical authorities. The response from Vasquez revealed the desperation of the espionage network and their willingness to abandon subtlety when their mission was threatened. Dr. Morrison, you are interfering with national security operations that exceed your authority. These assessments will proceed immediately regardless of your objections. The confrontation escalated when Morrison refused to yield his medical authority and demanded that hospital security verify the credentials of Vasquez's specialists through official channels. His challenge forced the espionage network to choose between abandoning their mission and revealing their true nature through direct confrontation with legitimate hospital authority. Betina's forced revelation came when she stepped forward to support Morrison's position. Recognizing that passive observation was no longer sufficient to prevent catastrophic intelligence compromise, Dr. Morrison is correct about proper authorization procedures. As someone with experience in military medical protocols, I can confirm that these assessment methods are not standard for classified aircraft cases. Her statement crossed the line from nursing support to technical expertise that contradicted her cover identity. But the escalating crisis required immediate intervention, regardless of personal consequences. The espionage network's aggressive approach had created a situation where protecting Aurora 7 intelligence was more important than maintaining operational security. Vasquez's response confirmed that Betina's cover had been compromised, and that her true identity was at least partially known. Nurse Anton's background includes qualifications that she hasn't disclosed to hospital administration. Perhaps she should explain her actual expertise with experimental aircraft systems and military intelligence protocols. The challenge forced Betina to make the decision she had been avoiding throughout her assignment. Maintaining her cover was no longer possible, and protecting Major Reyes required revealing enough of her true background to establish credibility for confronting the espionage operation. My name is Squadron Leader Betina Anton, NATO Defense Intelligence Division, she announced, removing her hospital ID badge and revealing the military credentials concealed beneath her nursing uniform. I'm conducting a counterintelligence investigation into unauthorized information collection from classified aircraft programs, and I have evidence that Dr. Vasquez and her associates are foreign intelligence operatives. The revelation transformed the confrontation from medical disagreement to international espionage crisis. Morrison's expression reflected shock, but also vindication that his concerns about unauthorized data collection had been justified by the presence of a NATO intelligence operative. Major Reyes, despite her medical condition, immediately understood that her treatment had become the center of a spy operation targeting her aircraft's classified systems. The espionage network's response was swift and professional. Vasquez activated communication devices that summoned additional operatives while her specialists moved to secure the treatment room, and prevent interference with their intelligence collection efforts. The hospital had become a battlefield where NATO's most classified aerospace secrets hung in the balance. Squadron Leader Anton's presence confirms the significance of this intelligence operation. Vasquez declared with the confidence of someone whose mission authorization came from sources that didn't recognize NATO authority. Major Reyes will undergo complete neurological assessment, regardless of local objections. The information we require justifies whatever measures prove necessary. The forced revelation had eliminated any possibility of covert resolution. Betina's true identity was now known to foreign intelligence operatives. Morrison was aware of the espionage threat to his patient, and Major Reyes understood that her medical treatment had become a confrontation over NATO's most classified aerospace technologies. The battle for Aurora 7 intelligence was about to begin in earnest, with opposing intelligence services facing each other directly over the hospital bed of a pilot, whose medical data could determine the future balance of global air power. The time for subtlety and covert operations had passed. Now everything depended on courage, expertise, and the willingness to protect NATO's aerospace superiority, regardless of personal cost. The confrontation in Major Reyes's treatment room reached its climax when Betina activated an emergency protocol that she had hoped never to use. Her military credentials included authorization for Code Phoenix, a NATO emergency response system that could override local authority during active intelligence threats to classified programs. The activation sent immediate alerts to military intelligence services across Europe while simultaneously locking down the hospital's communication systems to prevent data transmission. Code Phoenix is now active, Betina announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone speaking for NATO's highest security levels. This facility is under military intelligence control pending resolution of active espionage threats to classified aerospace programs. All non-authorized personnel will be detained for security processing. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within minutes, NATO security teams that had been positioned nearby as contingency support surrounded St. Catherine's Medical Center. Blackwood AFB activated its emergency protocols, securing all classified programs, while military police moved to arrest the foreign operatives who had been masquerading as medical specialists. Dr. Vasquez's final gambit revealed both her desperation and her professional training. Rather than surrender, she attempted to transmit the Aurora 7 data she had collected through backup communication channels, only to discover that Betina's evidence gathering had provided NATO technicians with enough information to block all unauthorized transmissions from the hospital. Years of careful espionage preparation were neutralized by superior counterintelligence that had anticipated and countered every backup plan. The systematic dismantling of the espionage network proceeded with clinical efficiency. Dr. Morrison's documentation of unauthorized medical procedures provided legal evidence of privacy violations, while Betina's intelligence files revealed the full scope of foreign penetration of NATO aerospace programs. Most significantly, the evidence identified the insider at Blackwood AFB who had been providing advance information about classified programs, Dr. Richard Klaus, a senior aerospace medicine specialist whose gambling debts had made him vulnerable to foreign recruitment. Major Reyes's recovery became a symbol of NATO's successful protection of its most classified technologies. Her neurological assessment, conducted under proper security protocols by legitimate medical specialists, confirmed that the Aurora 7's neural interface systems had performed flawlessly during the emergency. The medical data that foreign intelligence had sought so desperately remained secure, protecting the technological advantages that could prove decisive in future conflicts. The investigation's aftermath revealed the true scope of what Betina's mission had prevented. Foreign intelligence analysis of stolen NATO aerospace data had enabled the development of countermeasures that could have neutralized Western air superiority within months. The Aurora 7 intelligence would have provided the final piece needed to complete enemy understanding of advanced fighter capabilities, potentially shifting global military balance in favor of hostile nations. 6 months later, Betina stood in the Pentagon briefing room where NATO defense ministers had gathered to review the comprehensive security reforms implemented following the St. Catherine's crisis. Her role in preventing catastrophic intelligence compromise had earned recognition at the highest levels, but more importantly, it had triggered systematic changes in how classified medical programs protected sensitive information. The Vasquez espionage network represented the most sophisticated penetration of NATO aerospace programs in decades, explained General Patricia Hammond, Director of Defense Intelligence, as she addressed the assembled ministers. Squadron Leader Anton's investigation not only neutralized immediate threats, but also exposed vulnerabilities that have now been addressed through comprehensive security reforms. The reforms extended far beyond medical facilities to encompass all aspects of classified aerospace programs. New protocols required multiple authorization levels for accessing sensitive patient data, independent monitoring of all medical equipment used in classified cases, and regular counterintelligence assessment of personnel with access to experimental aircraft information. Dr. Morrison had been appointed to lead the new Medical Security Review Board, bringing his ethical commitment security awareness to oversight of military medical programs across NATO. His experience with the Aurora 7 case had demonstrated that medical professionals could be effective partners in protecting classified information when properly informed about security requirements. Most significantly, the investigation had revealed that medical data from experimental aircraft testing contained far more sensitive information than previously recognized. Pilot performance parameters, equipment interaction data, and physiological responses to advanced systems could be analyzed to reveal critical details about aircraft capabilities and limitations. This understanding led to revolutionary changes in how such information was collected, stored, and protected. The Aurora 7 program itself had been strengthened rather than compromised by the crisis. Enhanced security protocols, improved pilot protection systems, and better medical support had actually accelerated the aircraft's development while ensuring that its capabilities remained classified. Major Reyes had returned to flight status and continued testing the neural interface systems that would define the next generation of fighter aircraft. 3 years after the St. Catherine's crisis, Betina received assignment to NATO's new Aerospace Security Division, where she led efforts to identify and prevent foreign intelligence penetration of classified aviation programs. Her unique combination of pilot experience, medical knowledge, and counterintelligence expertise had made her invaluable for protecting the technological advantages that maintained Western military superiority. The transformation that began with a travel nurse observing suspicious medical protocols had evolved into comprehensive security reforms that protected NATO's most advanced aerospace technologies. Foreign intelligence services found their access to classified information severely limited, while Allied aerospace programs operated with enhanced security that prevented future espionage operations. As Betina, our EVIEWED intelligence reports about foreign attempts to penetrate new aerospace programs, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from undercover nursing to leadership of international security efforts. The mission that began with maintaining her cover while investigating suspicious activities had concluded with her true identity revealed and her expertise recognized at the highest levels of military leadership. The greatest satisfaction came from knowing that pilots like Major Reyes could continue pushing the boundaries of aerospace technology while protected by security systems that prevented foreign intelligence from exploiting their courage and dedication. The battle for NATO's aerospace superiority had been won not through superior firepower, but through the courage of individuals willing to risk everything to protect the technologies that defended democratic nations. sometimes the most important. Victories in intelligence warfare came not from dramatic confrontations, but from quiet professionals who recognized threats others missed and possessed the courage to act when action was required, regardless of personal cost or career consequences. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.